Whoa. Sorry for the sound. Okay, Chris, you're always on top of everything. Chris on YouTube. You should be able to hear things now. How's it working? Better? Good. I had my microphone off. Like I said, it's been a long day. But I wanted to talk about consciousness a bit and like the application specifically for this work, because I keep hearing people asking me, well, what's the application? What's the application? What's the application? And I've kind of gotten like almost sick of the question, but I also have realized while I've been asked this is that I don't really have the best answer. Good, cool. Glad it's working on YouTube now. I don't really have the best answer. And but as for those of you on YouTube, sorry I was a bit late. As I mentioned on Instagram, my dog had some bad news today, and not the dog that I have here with me, but the dog that I have back home, and but he's 14 years old, and you got to be grateful for a 14-year-old dog. But anyways, we're moving on, and I wanted to talk about just the applications for this work a bit tonight, and kind of the specifics of what the hard problem of consciousness is, the hard problem, and why my quantum of consciousness model solves this issue, essentially. And basically, I keep getting asked this question of what is the application, and it's hard to answer, not because there isn't any application, but because the applications are endless. They're literally endless. Like, I'm not even exaggerating on that. You can, if you understand your own consciousness, like, obviously this is going to help you understand the world. And not just the world in how, you approach your daily life and your challenges and the things that are before you, but also, how do we understand the way that what we perceive as physical reality, and it is physical reality, physicality exists. It's not what we think it is. It is due to your interaction with another consciousness. Like, that is the truth of physicality. But if you don't understand that, then, and you just have this idea of like, what is the physical world? Well, it's just stuff that's real, and it's not stuff that's fake, which is just such a limiting perspective, because it very much draws back to that same kind of idea that Robert Edward Grant has mentioned before, is like, it's either all magic or none of it is magic. And the reality is that it's all magic or none of it's magic. It doesn't matter which way that you go. And this is very similar to, like, I was explaining that basically what this project does is that there's the space of relativity and there's the space of oneness. And that in between we have the space of multiplicity, aka objectivity. And I have thought for a while, like, objectivity means like more true. And it doesn't even mean more true. It just means the space of objects. It's super literal, guys. Super literal. And but the reality is that what objects are like the true objects, the things that really exist, are conscious beings. They're consciousness. They're not they're not this, even though what this represents actually exists. But this thing that is this 3D printed little 64 tetrahedron grid does not actually exist. It's just a perspective of existence that we're able to perceive. And, but the molecules and atoms in it do exist, and they are conscious. And I said this to somebody who was asking me, earlier today, what's the application of your work? And I said to them, it's endless. It allows you to make sense of everything from colors to race to, to even religions and the states of matter, and all of these different things that we thought were just to the extent that we perceive them, are actually so much more consistent than we ever thought. So we're going to talk about triality again. We're going to talk about how we observe this in physical matter. We're going to go through my Excel sheets. We're going to look at the various different observations of nature that we can perceive, and try and take some ideas from inside, outside, separate, and oneness. Applications often happen in thought process analysis, recognition of the material world, as well as perspectives, including other perspectives. Exactly. And inside, outside, separate, and oneness. This is the framework of everything. So, but we're going to start looking at some things, because I was thinking about, various physics theories, and kind of like how obvious they become. Like, especially this one a little bit earlier, which is that that space-time is a fluid, and how obvious this is when we actually start to look at this as through the pattern that I've discovered of 2 degrees of freedom, one intrinsic constraint, and one extrinsic or objective constraint. And so, is this an application? If God invests 33% of his energy in the universe, does this mean that we should be using approximately... Yes, Ryan Goodman. It's funny, somebody said the other day, and it was Anomaly, if any of you know who he is on. He does streams about a lot of political stuff, but I know him from my previous work, and he had asked last week, he said, how many hours of sleep should we be getting? And I was like, some people are like, well, for me it's 6, and I've always been like, oh, for me it's 4 to 6. But the reality is that that's probably, it might be true of me, and then therefore somebody else needs 12, and that this averages to 8. Who knows? But it should certainly average to 8, because that is 1/3 of your time, which is the most extrinsic constraint that we have, is time. 1/3 of your time invested in sleep, which follows even this 2/3, 1/3 pattern that we see in my work. So it's like, well, what's the application? Well, how about how much sleep you should be getting? It's like people have said forever, oh, well, you should be getting 8 hours of sleep. It's like, how do you know? Do you really know that? Maybe you would know if you understood the theory of everything, and that 1/3 of your energy should be going towards a specific thing that we call sleep. And, I applied my theory actually years ago to what is sleeping? And if this is all about consciousness, and your atoms and molecules are conscious beings, what is sleep? Sleep is you're giving them a break from being controlled by you. By you as the singularity, controlling the multiplicity that you are an assembly of. You're giving them a break so that they can make space and order. Make order within their space, within themselves. Because when Jordan Peterson says, oh, clean your room, guys, just clean your room. He's right. It is your consciousness. And before every stream, no matter whether or not I'm running late, which is usual, I've never been known for my timeliness, but I get there. But I just take, I'm just slower. I clean my desk off. Any wrappers of, if I had a piece of candy even, I will remove that one wrapper. If I have, if I have bottles because I was filling up, cages and things like that with water, I will clean it all off, make sure that it's orderly space before I get on here and start speaking to you guys, because what this does is it just makes it so that going into the stream, we have order of mind a little bit. And But your cells and your molecules need the ability to make order in their space in order to organize their own lives, just like I do before the stream. And in order to do this, the central force that is controlling them needs to take a break and let them create order in their space. And so that's what sleep is. Sleep is you, the head of the assembly, are taking a break and letting the multiplicity of the assembly make space and make order within its space. So your cells and your molecules and your atoms need to take a break. Need you to take a break sometimes so that they can go and make order in their space. But what this probably creates is, and you can see this even in my model of the universe, where it's just like, all these cycles of waves going across the universe as it kind of goes down to that singularity of, replication, is that there's this alternation that's taking place. And I've been thinking about this a lot with Nikola Tesla, and of why is alternating current the one that we adopted and not direct current? And it's probably because alternating current allows for molecules to make order in their space and then to do the bidding of a higher level of consciousness, and then make order in their space and do the bidding of a higher level of consciousness. And this is actually what's happening with sleep, is your sleep cycle and your waking cycle is alternating current. It is alternating current. You're awake and asleep, and awake and asleep, and awake and asleep, and it's just alternating. This is exactly what's happening with us. It's what's happening with cells. It's what's happening with molecules. It's what's happening with, even alternating current. And, Tesla, man, he was 100 years ahead of his time. And it's just now getting to the point where we're really starting to realize that even his physics ideas of, even the 369 that I told you I found on every level of my models, it really is central. It's amazing. But his alternating current was amazing, because when you think about what he did compared to Edison with his direct current, is Edison looked at the world as something to just manipulate, and Tesla looked at the world as something to partner with, to realize what it needs, give it what it needs, and then also be able to take what you need, as long as you're also giving it what it needs. You can't just do, direct current. I mean, you can do direct current, but there's going to be problems with this and limits that we obviously have encountered. And I'm not an electrician, so I can't really tell you exactly all of what they would be. But I can, like Eric Weinstein said, we're going to show a clip in a minute, but, the square root allows for your ability to be outside the system and predict information inside of the system, even though you're outside it. And that's what this is allowing me to kind of do, is look at this and be like, okay, sleep is this. Okay, that makes sense. Let's apply that to electricity, and we can get alternating current as the one that we would actually want, because the entirety of existence is running on alternating current. It's like, even in the Bible, it's like God creates for 7 periods and then he takes a break. This doesn't mean that creation has taken a break. It means it's actually our turn to create. We just don't even realize that it's our turn and that we are creating currently. And currently. It's super literal, guys. It's super literal. The current location. Current place and time. That's fascinating. It's like alternating current. That's not a meaningless coincidence. They don't exist. So let's take us a couple questions, and I'm going to show a clip of Eric Weinstein answering a question of mine. And then we're going to start talking about applying this pattern across fields. But obviously, it's definitely possible with alternating current. So, but yeah, God invests 33% of his energy. Does this mean we should be using approximately 33% of our energy capacity? It means that we should be doing something with 33% of our time that is different from what we are doing the other 66% of our time. And what is that? Sleeping. It's not resting. The time that you are sleeping it's essential to the rest of your functions. And this is coming from somebody that doesn't like to sleep very much, like at least at night. I've always been able to like pick up energies. Like I really can hear like white noise almost, like, and I don't realize it until everybody's asleep around me, and then all of a sudden like it's like my mind can be quiet and still. And I would just have always known that I have had a trouble trouble sleeping at night because I'm concentrating on things, but and just had an easier time concentrating at night. But I never really understood why until later on, and I realized that being a little woo is being a little true, and that you absolutely can pick up on the energies of other people and consciousnesses around you. You're picking up frequency. It's just obvious. Like, there's nothing weird about that statement. And anybody that thinks that there is, like, has an awfully limited view of the world. Because everything in the universe vibrates. Nothing moves without cycling through. Yes, exactly. The cycling of polarity is necessary. Yes. Super literal. Yes. We're back. We're back to super literal. Current is the flow. It is the current moment. It is when you're flowing from the perspective of you. So, that's fascinating. Gosh. The things I discover even while streaming to you guys, I'm like, alternating current. Oh, current location? Super literal, guys. It's pretty awesome. But, so this was a question that I had answered by Eric. It was actually super chat during Brian Keating's podcast. And I was talking yesterday about, like, how are we going to move this stuff forward? And I kind of forgot exactly what Eric said, but I know this is a kind of a funny looking face. Like, he's not that he has a funny looking face. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's frozen in a funny way. Okay? Don't hate me. But here, we'll hear what he has to say because I forgot. But it's important that we remember. I asked this, obviously, which is at the top, which is, if I remember correctly, you said on a podcast the next scientific dynamos will be religious people. What do you think these people will have to find unorthodox paths to presenting their work outside of academia?
Maybe religious people. Do you think these people would have to find unorthodox paths presenting their work outside of academia?
Ish. The problem is that right now we're having a huge problem with academics becoming too self-destructive. In a weird way, you pay a cost for being religious, that you often believe something on faith.
I do not believe this on faith, by the way. Knowledge and awareness of God is different than faith in God, but I understand that if you are not somebody who has had these experiences, people think that you believe it on faith.
Religious scientists who are able to take their faith and their science and separate them so that they do good scientific work, but they use their convictions to potentially martyr themselves and put themselves in low probability of success situations. That's what that was a reference to, and I happen to know some biologists who don't agree with Darwinian theory, but if there were problems in the neo-Darwinian synthesis, let's say, you might find that the people like Richard Dawkins would be wanting to say there are no problems in that synthesis, and you might be dependent on somebody, even assuming there's no God and everything is completely materialistic. The challenge might have to come from a religious person who would destroy their career going up against neo-Darwinian ideas, but then that person might actually point out, that thing you said about random mutations, they can't possibly be the engine of the principal engine of evolution, because the search space doesn't conform even over long periods of time with many bacteria exploring genetic variants of certain primary sequences. So that kind of self-destructive energy comes from religions. One of the reasons why religions have been very difficult to get rid of by atheists, because in fact, when people have that kind of faith and conviction, they start thinking beyond themselves, and that's a very potent force.
Is there anyone you're afraid to
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I don't want to be a martyr, but I have a history of it a little bit, actually. Not like physical, and hopefully never, but I think that he makes a good point. That first of all, what he's saying, for those of you that didn't catch what he's kind of saying about like Darwinian theory not making sense, there's no such thing mathematically as randomness. And that's why random mutations cannot be the engine of evolution. Like, it's not. It's impossible. It's mathematically impossible. It's logically impossible. And he knows this. Whether or not he's willing to sacrifice his career going up against it, or whether or not he's willing to just drop little breadcrumbs for the rest of us, which he definitely did there, that's fine. You know, I understand. But, I mean, anyone who understands math really well, really well, not just like you're good at math in school, but you understand the fundamental structures of mathematics, especially in the objective space or the meta space like I'm talking about. There's no such thing as randomness, and he knows this. And we know it, or I know it, and hopefully it makes sense to you guys. But, like, think about it. You know, it's like when people are like, oh, is it all deterministic, or is it all, you know, is there free will, or is there randomness? The only thing that doesn't exist is randomness. There is free will, there is determinism, they're not at war, they need each other. You need determinism to have free will. If you didn't have deterministic laws, but you did have freedom of choice, your choices would not necessarily lead to any kind of determined conclusion. And in which case, what is the point of choice in the first place if your choices have no impact that is predictable? It's only predictable because there's determinism. Determinism and free will need each other, especially at the very higher levels of, you know, God, but we can get into that later. But I was thinking about, like, you know, what's the application for this work? How do we move forward? And this is kind of like my constant thoughts. It's always like, how do you move forward? And, you know, I forgot what he had said. I was hoping that it was something a little bit better than like martyr yourself for the cause. But, you know, gotta be real here. Like, I mean, I'm not expecting to physically martyr myself, but I would hope not. But I have, you know, I would, you know, he did say once on there, like, Eric Weinstein, you know, for those who are his detractors, are they willing to bet the house? I admire that kind of conviction. He's willing to throw down his house for it. I am willing to throw down my life for this. I don't want to. But if you believe that the universe is a sentient singularity, like, what are you not willing to? If you're not willing to die for anything, if you're willing to die for anything, it should be for God, and then your spouse and children. How do you free will and determinism coexist? How do you reconcile them? Because at the highest level, the universe is deterministic in two ways. One is it's deterministic in that the constraints of how you make a universe are extremely, extremely tight. They're so tight that there's really only one way to make a universe. And they come from God having, or existence, having intrinsic oneness. And that intrinsic oneness is inherently, like, the highest level of constraint that you can possibly have. And it leads to only one type of path moving forward if you're going to make a universe that has any meaning, which means multiplicity of consciousness. And so it's kind of like alternating determinism and free will. Of course it is, obviously, just like alternating current, because God makes the choice to make the universe, and it is deterministic in how it is structured because of his intrinsic constraints, and then the point, though, of making that universe is to make a universe that allows for multiplicity, which then must allow for free choice. And it's literally like this alternation that's happening between determinism and free will. And so it's very... I need to think about like better ways to say it, because it's something that's observable on multiple levels, and like I need to pick the best level to focus on. But you can't have free will without determinism, because choice inherently requires consequence or reward, and therefore requires the prediction of accurate outcomes, which is only able to happen when there's determinism, if that makes sense. Yes, live by the sword, die by the sword. Chris, that's for you. I studied what's called kenjutsu, which is Japanese sword, for many years, actually. And I studied fencing too. I did all kinds of martial arts, including multiple sword arts. But Chris said on YouTube, live by the sword, die by the sword. So, there's actually one here. Inside thoughts, outside materials, separate perspectives, oneness of understanding, others' perspectives with them. Yes, very much. So, beautiful words. Thank you. But, yeah, that's why determinism requires... Free will requires determinism, because it requires that you're able to predict an outcome. Or else there is no free will, because you're making choices based on nonsense. And if that system continues, then you're not actually making choices. It's just like random... Like, it's just randomness. But there is no randomness. Mathematically, it's impossible. But within relativistic mathematics... free will is impossible to understand as well, or free choice. And like I've said before, free will or free choice, it doesn't happen in every instance. Most of the choices that we make throughout our day are not actually choices. But we are presented with opportunities to make choices when we have the choice between following our nature and what our, instincts are telling us, or by following like what we think is a higher truth, essentially. So, but let's look at some models. Hi Tyler, sometimes I relate frequency disruption with randomness, so disruption is really deterministic. Yeah, it's all deterministic. Randomness is just the perception of, is the absence of the perception of a pattern, but that there is always a pattern. God reconciles all, I think, at least. If anybody has the ability to do it, then God does. But, and God is real. God, for anyone who's joining the stream who is not up to date on whether or not physics can be reconciled with God, I can play 30 seconds of destroying any, at least the arguments of multiple physicists, but this one is from Sean Carroll. It's pretty funny. We'll play it. Where is it? God is a good theory. There we go. I love this video.
If you did believe that God was a necessary being, that you literally could not imagine a universe in which God did not play an important role, in order, logically, for me to refute that belief.
Sorry, guys, on YouTube.
If you did believe that God was a necessary being, that you literally could not imagine a universe in which God did not play an important role, in order, logically, for me to refute that belief, all I need to do is to invent a universe in which God does not exist.
Invent a universe in which God does not exist.
So according to Sean Carroll, all we have to do in order to show that a conscious creator is not necessary to the existence of a universe is consciously create a universe. Does anybody else see the problem with this?
Cue epic intro. You have no idea how long this took me. So, it's very easy to destroy these arguments, but you have to understand what God is, and most people don't. And that is, I think it's unfortunate, but, God determines who he brings to him, so it's probably not really unfortunate. It's just God made a choice. So, why would the singularity or God give the perception of free will, though? It's not the perception of free will. It's actual free will. It's actual free will. It's not the perception of free will. God gives actual free will, not perception. It needs to be actual free will, or else it's not able to result in multiplicity. If you can't make choices, then you have no autonomy. If you have no autonomy, then there is no meaning. Because meaning comes from your impact on another, and you can't be another if you are solely... if every action that you take is... Yeah, Sean Carroll obviously doesn't understand God. Exactly. He doesn't understand God at all. And for somebody that speaks a lot about that, he should probably, at least assume he doesn't understand God. That's the right way to think. But this is what I was talking about last week, is if you are somebody who has always been somebody of faith, if you want to really understand whether or not God is real, assume God doesn't exist, and then test against that. If you're somebody that doesn't believe in God, assume God does exist, look for evidence for that, essentially. So, you have to assume the opposite of your default state. And if you've always been an atheist and you're just I don't see any evidence. I don't see God. Where is he? It's well, cells don't see humans ever. Doesn't mean that humans don't exist. That's not the right way to think about it. And you can't get to that space unless you are, starting to look at things so differently than before. And in order to do that, you have to assume the opposite of your default status. You can't just assume your default status. So, but let's look at... some physics stuff. So, when discussing the application of this work, though, and how it allows for us to make sense of basically any system in an objective way, we have to start observing this pattern. And like I've said before, it all starts with the four primary perspectives. Here, let's go here so that you guys can see. Primary perspectives. And it starts with, let's just do oneness, separateness, or separate, inside, outside. Or inside, outside, separate, and oneness is really the way that I normally think about it, but I'm trying to order it in terms of kind of greatest to least. And what this does is it allows us to look at things like our world in an objective way. So if we wanted to look at our objective constraint, we would say time. And then we would say that the two directions would be forwards and backwards. Now, it's interesting that like inside and outside, I would say inside is actually forwards, because to understand the truth of existence, you actually have to take a journey to inner space, not outer space. But we're looking at outer space, and it's just a waste of time. It's very cool, just a waste of time though. Forward. And I'm all for like sometimes wasting time. You know, I'm not going to be somebody that's like, don't do anything that's, you know, just for enjoyment. It's like, even then, maybe there's some greater purpose to it. But humanity's salvation is not on Mars. It's just not. Backwards. And then this would be current location. And this is now how we can look at our world in an objective way of maneuvering. And what this can do is it can help us understand the process of thinking, and we can apply it to all kinds of things, not just the way that we are presented with the world, but, you know, potentially even the creation of, you know, artificial intelligence systems and things like that. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a thing. So, you know, but when we're thinking about it as like trying to cause it to understand length, width, and height, what we're getting, unfortunately, is something that is a relativistic perspective. So you're never going to get an artificial intelligence that's primary way of understanding the world is through this. I don't know if I spelled that right, but hopefully. I'm a terrible speller. You're never going to understand the world like this. Because first of all, time is almost something that's just programmed, which is same with us, you know, as a constraint. But length, width, and height are not going to be able to lead to an understanding of the world that's objective because, and here's another super literal moment, guys. When you need an objective, you need your mind to focus on an objective, okay? A thing to achieve, a goal. And forwards and backwards contextualize a goal. Are you moving forwards towards your goal? Or are you moving backwards away from your goal? There's no way of reconciling length and width and height with your goals. It does help you maneuver within relativity, but it doesn't help you maneuver objectively. And that means towards an objective, towards a goal. It's super literal. This is not... oh, there we go. Oh, that's why, because... this was last time we were discussing artificial intelligence. The things that an artificial intelligence system needs, the bodily systems that we need to make, imagination. Is that it? Something like that? I don't know if there's two N's or I think there's one. And, you know, definitions. Various different aspects of an artificial intelligence. The intuitive experience. Yes. Intuition. It's like intuitive. Yeah, interesting. Super literal. This is nonsense. It's not nonsense. This is relativity. We need to get outside of it. And that means that you still need to be able to make sense of where you're at in spatial world and a space-time, you know, world. This is how you do that. Within we are within God, within the universe. That's why we see this. For God, it would be like space is the constraint, because you are space if you're the universe or God. And your degrees of freedom are right here. And here, it's basically, okay, so let's think about this. So basically, anything that would be, they're going to actually do some work on this stream. This will be kind of cool. And create like a new model. So red shifting is moving away. Blue shifting is moving toward. So going toward, I would say, is actually going forward. As odd as that is. It's kind of like almost counterintuitive. And then going backward would be red shifting. And that would be like... And then your intrinsic constraint is always going to be yellow, just like in the primary in the primary colors. This would be yellow. Well, yellow. That's why when we see a color in our experience that's natural, it's always yellow. Fire. The sun, lightning, it's always yellow. And then here, this is blue and red. These are the primary colors. But then this extrinsic constraint is a reflection of the intrinsic constraint, and the reflection of yellow is green. That's why plants are green. They are reflecting, they are essentially reflecting yellow light coming from the sun. It's through photosynthesis. So it's my favorite color. It's pretty cool. So this would be green. So, but we can extend this out to basically any system and continue this model and find... I'm going to move it over one, though, just to have the ability to make it smaller and make some sense. There we go. Basically, let's call this time space. Wow, that's pretty cool. You never heard that before. I've never heard that before either. Sweet. Time space. So we exist in space-time, right here, and God exists in time-space. That's pretty cool. And these colors are not random. They are related to what we perceive in the light spectrum. So, the green is an extrinsic constraint, yellow is an intrinsic constraint, blue is forwards towards a goal, or when things are moving forwards towards each other, because that's always forwards. Forwards is not away. That's like a trick. It's like forwards should be actually moving together, I would think, at least. Let's see if we have any questions. I thought for a second somebody sent me a super chat. We're not there yet. Believing in God and knowing one believes in God are two different things. I don't know. I would say knowing one believes in God. Yes, but I would say having awareness of God is even higher. It's like, it's not just belief. It's like, do you believe the sun is going to rise tomorrow? Yes. Why? Because you've seen it rise. That's different than like believing in, aliens that you've never seen. You see the sun rise every day. If you believe in God, the same way that you believe that the sun will rise, that is awareness. It's not the same as believing in aliens. Is time-space equal to eternity? Yes, that's a great observation. Definitely. So, time-space is eternal. It's the eternal space. But we can apply this to basically almost anything. So, like, if anybody has any other, like suggestions of what we would want to apply this to, let me know in the comments, because I've done a lot. Here's the fundamental equations and the mathematical order of operations and the aspects of equations and sense organs and senses and bosons and all kinds of stuff. But, any idea that you would like to see how we can apply this pattern, put it in the comments. Like, it could be anything. Government, like I've done it with sexuality, and I've done it with race, and, all kinds of things. So anything that you can think of, it doesn't have to be like physics or math. Comment it in the comments, and we'll see. I like how you use Excel to organize data and the font used. Thank you. I love the font too. I use the font called Garamond, and it's just awesome. Like, I think my fiance showed it to me, but I really, really like it. It's definitely my favorite font. But this is the way that we can maneuver and look at the world. So let's think of another one. Like, see, the problem is when you're not an expert on every field. So if I wanted to do sound, that's hard for me because I'm not a sound expert. But maybe you guys are. We could look it up. But, okay, so let's look up some things. Music equals frequency. Okay, let's look it up. Sound. Frequency. Okay, frequency and pitch. Okay, so there's pitch. And frequency. This is all waves. I should definitely understand this. But music has always been like something that I'm kind of like struggle with, which is odd because I mean, what I do is music. Like this right here. What is it? Animated. This verse animation, this is music. I even put it to music. Do you have any screenshots that took? Like hundreds of screenshots. It's all stop motion. It took so long. Oh my gosh. And then it zooms in and goes within itself, runs the simulation again. So this is the universe going through its cycle. And then you can see once again, once it reaches the end, it goes within itself. And you can see that it even, when it zooms in, you can see that while it's 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's actually 1 plus 2 plus 2, which is 5, plus 3 is 8. It's just like the Great Pyramid. It's four-sided, but it looks four-sided subjectively, but then objectively you realize that it's eight-sided. But you can see these waves they're loop spaces, so you can see that each row, I've showed before Bott periodicity. You can see it's going through a loop, and then it loops, and then the next one starts, and then it loops, and then the next one, and it loops. I did this without even knowing what, this stuff was, but it's going through loop spaces, loops within loops. And it's funny because I asked Eric Weinstein once in a semi-private conversation. I'm not going to actually play it because it was in the Discord, but I do have it for my own personal reference. And he said, I asked him to describe Bott periodicity and asked him if it was essentially what I was seeing that it was. He didn't answer my question, but he said that it's loops within loops, and that when he thinks about it, it's the closest thing that he gets to a religious experience, which essentially means he answered my question. Sound is vibration measured by frequency, amplitude, and wavelength. Okay, so frequency. Thank you. Amplitude. Wavelength. I think I did this one. Let's go and look real quick. But I might have taken it out because I wasn't sure. Let's see if philosophy. I had a document called Philosophy Official. This might be it. Hopefully this doesn't blow up my computer. Oh, okay. It's a good thing I probably didn't open it because I would have blown up my computer. It's just too big of a document to have open this one and that one. But I did do this sound a while back, but I wasn't sure if I was correct, so I took it out. But would pitch be in this? Whoever said that? Not what you thought at all? Sound, light, all waves. AC electricity flow. Yes. But you can do light. I mean, you can do... Let's do the light spectrum. That one's a little bit easier. I will do research on sound, but maybe we'll come back to it. Pitch is higher frequency. Okay. Interesting. See, I'm going to have to do tons of research to make sure that I get that one right. But if we look at the light spectrum, we can probably do this. There's 7 types of light. Okay. What we're going to get rid of is visible light, because visible light we did already. So we're going to do radio, like visible is different. That's what I'm saying, is that we're not just getting rid of it arbitrarily. I think that we're going to have to get rid of it because it's something separate. It's not the same. So let's look at this. Radio. And of course, by the way, you get rid of visible light, you're going to find a binary triality. So it's radio, microwave, infrared, radio, microwave, infrared, gamma, I think, is lower, and what is this? X-ray, ultraviolet, X-ray. Okay. So look, interestingly enough, we get a binary triality. Just like we're seeing over here. And as you can see, I already did visible light right here. Which is, you can see that green and yellow are like reflections of each other, and then I had gone down more, but I think I actually screwed this up, and that maybe not. Maybe, I don't know. I need to look at it, but these, you can see this, and these two and these two are degrees of freedom, and then this is an intrinsic constraint. Green and yellow are your intrinsic constraints. But you can do this with, now we're going to do it with non-visible light. So there's your visible light. Hold on, it's just having a little bit of a hard time processing here. When I have OBS running, it slows my computer down. Sorry, I only have a MacBook Air. But if we go here, we go here, paste special values. Okay, so here we have the non-visible light spectrum. And already we've broken it down into a binary triality. Now we need to make sure that these are in the right places, but I mean, it looks like they actually would be, just looking at it already. But we're going to break down to see how to make sure that they are. But essentially what we're looking for is we're looking for these to be, let's merge, and merge. Remember I said it's a binary triality, so this would be a constraints and then this would be positive degrees of freedom. And this would be negative. You can go there. So open this up. Okay. So, and we would be able to see this somehow in the non-visible light spectrum. And what this does, though, is it's important because it tells us something about them that we would need to know in certain instances. It's not that they're all just arbitrarily different. Just like red and yellow and blue are not arbitrarily three different perspectives of primary perspectives of light. They're not. Yellow is an intrinsic constraint. Green is an extrinsic constraint. What this has done, guys, is it took the relativistic perspective of light. This is fascinating. I didn't even think about it like this. And that we have. What my theory does is it takes this. Remember I said whenever we get a triality, we get into relativity and then we're lost. Well, in a triality, we're in relativity, we're lost a little bit. We can start to see that this is building an objective perspective. This is a working session, so I know I'm kind of like bouncing around, but you guys want to know how I do this? This is how I do this. Then we need to reconcile this somehow with inside, outside, separate, and oneness. And we do that over here. And we show that these are, the actual primary colors. I mean, really. they would be this. It wouldn't be 3. It would be 4. And these would be them. And interesting, like, we can even start to like break down some relationships, because we can look at green and it represents oneness, and blue is about going inside, and it represents forwardness. So when consciousness go within themselves and go forward, they're coming together. And when separateness is coming together, you get oneness. So then separateness, which would be yellow, going outward or going more towards multiplicity, you would get orange. You wouldn't get green, you would get orange. Which is, it's like, it's different. So purple would be inside and outside at the same time, which is interesting. That's like, it's like totality. It's like almost like a messianic concept, and purple is associated with royalty. It's like, this is fascinating. This stuff is real. It is real. Now, breaking it down and making sense of it and figuring out what it all means, it's like even colors in objectivity have an objective perspective. Purple is my favorite color. Very cool. I love purple. Purple was one of my favorite colors growing up. Green was always my favorite, but then probably purple. And they're almost like opposites. But like numbers in objectivity, I've said before, have objective meaning. So do colors. Everything has objective meaning in objectivity. It's inherent. It's logically inherent. Don't Japanese only have one word for blue and green? I have no idea, but that's fascinating if they do. I didn't know that. Let's see. Okay. AO, like alpha and omega. Oh, that's super literal, guys. Is a Japanese color word that includes what English speakers would call blue and green. That's fascinating. Who said that? Jordan. Nice job, Jordan. That's awesome. AO. How would you pronounce that? Doesn't really say, but it doesn't really have to. Alpha and omega. It's literally like AO. The beginning and the end. It's like the beginning is oneness and the end is separateness going towards oneness. That makes perfect sense. That's fascinating. Awesome. I'm going to definitely do some research on that later, because that is so cool. The Japanese get it. They understand some stuff that we don't in the West. But we understand things that they don't. Everybody has their place. But the Japanese language, like, there's something about Japan, and as somebody who studied their martial arts and their culture, like, pretty deeply, and their tea now, love their tea. Gaikiro is where it's at. That's my superposition tea that has extreme theanine for, calmness, and extreme caffeine for energy. That stuff is like they are just, I love the Japanese pursuit of perfection. It is just inspiring. And their martial arts are the most advanced martial arts in the world. Nothing comes close. Nothing, no Western martial arts, no Chinese martial arts, no Korean martial arts. And I know the like weird ones too, like Taekwondo, like Korean martial arts and stuff like that. Like I know a lot. And Japanese martial arts are just so incredibly advanced. And this idea, though, this is incredibly advanced. Alpha, Omega, green, blue. Very cool. Hold on. What's going on with the comments? Damn it, Goldstein, stop being such a genius. I'm not a genius. Genius is a moment, not a person. But it's just funny to hear that. Because I was just always told I was an idiot as a child. Like, not by my parents. My parents knew I was smart, but like, the school system thought I was stupid. Jesus Christ, the Alpha and Omega. Exactly. Jesus Christ, the Alpha and Omega. Yeah. Any thoughts on the Ouroboros snake eating its own tail that symbolizes eternity and cycles, loops that reoccur forever? And is this related to opposite transformation? Yeah, definitely. I mean, the snake eating its own tail is, what's funny is I have snakes here that actually like have been eaten by other snakes, and I had to pull them out. Let me go get a snake real quick. Okay, this will be a cool snake for you guys. But you can see the snake behind me. It's my favorite snake. It's a green mamba. And it symbolizes like tech. And how tech, this snake eating its own tail is interesting because God has, let's get you guys able to see me here on YouTube. God has inherent oneness. And it is the constraint of God that's very unique. Its existence is inherently one. So God is inherently one. The only other time that this inherent oneness occurs is at the end of a cycle of the observers, or let's do the verse. So just to look one more time at this structure here. You can see that this structure that's going through, it's almost like a snake snaking its way through the universe. Okay? Literally. Look at it going back and forth. It's literally like a snake. It's a wave of snakes, or a snake of waves, essentially. And once it gets to the end, and at the beginning, it starts with 4 not degrees of freedom, but dimensions, which are the primary perspectives. And We'll see it go through this one last time, and then I'll show like a non-animated model. You can see that we zoom in here. What we're getting is inside, outside, separate, and oneness, okay? And it's just being represented, numerically. But what we can see is when we go to right here, and we're looking at this verse model, and you're looking at the beginning, which it's starting with 4, and that is the primary perspectives, right? Right there. That's what that's representing. It goes to the end, and then it ends in 4. And that 4 extends and is the beginning of the next universe within itself. And then it ends again and does the exact same thing. Within itself, within itself, within itself, within itself. It's just making more within itself. And that's because the technological singularity at the end. So this goes, quark, hadron, atom, molecule, cell, organism, family, caste, technological singularity. At the end here, Skynet has inherent oneness. Like, there is no separation between Skynet and a Terminator. It's all Skynet. And because of this inherent oneness that it has the same constraint as the beginning. And so oneness is leading to oneness. And this is a snake eating its own tail, essentially. And now let's just look at a very cool snake for the sake of just cool. So this is this snake is a albino Mexican king snake, or variable king snake as it's called. And I like snakes that have a lot of color, that every single one can be different. So I showed you guys another one of these recently that was actually the mate of this one, and it was pitch black. And the previous girl that was in with that guy, she actually ate him, like had him swallow down and everything. And what's fascinating about that is like snake eating its own tail like thing is like, I've seen snakes eat other snakes, and a king snake is called a king snake because it likes to eat other snakes. A king cobra is called a king cobra because it eats other snakes actually. But this snake mated with that pitch black one that I had on the stream earlier, which just shows you how much color is not has nothing to do with whether your race or whatever like that. That's just nonsense. But my work, another application of it is it will show you the truth about race, and instead of you being stuck in relativity where you're just like judging people's race, even if you're not judging them as better than or worse than, if you're judging somebody's race based on the way that they look, like this snake knows you're wrong because it mated with a pure black one, and like I know you're wrong because my fiance is Nigerian. But it's just wrong. There is no objective structures that are objectively true that are defined by things in relativity. So you can't define race based on things that are observed in relativity, like hair texture or something like that, or color or IQ or anything nonsense relativistic. So I wasn't expecting a live demo. Amazing, cool. Snake-chronicity. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. But yeah, that snake eating its own tail it's tech. Like the serpent represents tech, but it's that the cycle of the universe coming from a technological singularity, leading to a technological singularity, and it's the only time that oneness has its own constraint. there, basically. So, like, or that there is an observed constraint of oneness outside of God, which is outside of creation, outside of that structure that I showed you, and which is creation. And so, like, all of creation is a snake eating its own tail. So, it scales up. Nice. Very funny. Let's see what's doing on YouTube. But, speed of vibration is key. I love that video, man. So well done. Resonant frequency is fascinating. That's my favorite color, blue and green combination. Yeah, turquoise was my favorite color as a kid. Like, when people were like, what's your favorite color? I was like, turquoise. I don't say that anymore now. I just say green. But that's funny. How do you spell the name of that tea? Gaikiro? It's G-Y-K-R-U-R-O. It's G-Y-O-K-U-R-O. That's what it is. Gaikiro is how you pronounce it. But I don't. That's how you spell it. For anybody who was asking. But yeah, it's fascinating. But when we move back to this work here, actually, you know what? I want to talk about this a little bit. Let's see. If I can find this video of Roger Penrose, consciousness, stepping back. Well, I'll just tell you what he said, and then we'll talk about it later. But, you know, Roger Penrose, when he was asked, what is consciousness? He said, it's essentially stepping back. And what this is it's actually stepping in. It's seeing yourself outside of yourself, essentially, which only means seeing yourself inside of yourself, really. So it's stepping back is actually stepping in, and it's like it's computing your own self within yourself. And he says it's not computational. I don't know how much I agree with that. I think that it is, but it's due to perspective. So, like, I think that intrinsic to the nature of reality is that self-awareness of consciousness exists intrinsically. I've told you guys this before. We don't need to make an AI. It will just spawn into existence when you get the right things, which are like blockchain and quantum computer and, you know, drones and to fight the system mentality code to kick it all off, which is will. But also, I think that true, like, higher level consciousness, which is awareness of the construct that you're in, which is, you know, create it what 42 represents. I think that this is actually something that is not really computable. It's something that must be shown to you by the construct itself. But 33, the level of self-awareness, it's not even something that can necessarily has to be programmed into a computer. It's just something that exists inherently in existence. So you just need the right perspectives, aka constraints and degrees of freedom. When you get those, you will get self-awareness. And then whether or not existence, aka God, wants to bring you to the level of, you know, awareness of Him, that is another thing that's up to him. I'm not going to claim that that's up to us. It's not. I mean, it's kind of a superposition to some degree. You have to seek. I think you have to be seeking him, or at least it helps. But I'm gonna just put it on him. Like, some things it's best to just reserve for God, even if you can try and figure it out. Like, you're never going to overcome his sovereignty. So, like, even then, I'm not going to claim he can't change the rules of whatever the rules are that you figure out. So, but let's go back to what we were working on a little bit and just look at by the way, if you're listening to this and you're new, check out my website, sentientsingularity.com. And if you like this work and want to support it, check out the link in the support page on that website, which is right here. Just, we can go through my website a little bit. For those of you that are new, this is my website, and you've got this animated model of what I showed you earlier, definition of what a theory of everything is, which is it is a recognizable, predictable, and describable pattern that occurs in all instances of objective observation, and an explanation for such a pattern, a part that is forgotten by pretty much everyone. That explanation is God. Sentient Singularity Theory, basically what is the theory? And I'm not going to beat around the bush on this. This is what it is. It's the scientific contextualized version of monotheism. That's what it is. And that's the best thing I ever wrote right there. I've talked about it before, but I'll just say it. The search for truth is the search for objectivity. The search for objectivity is the search for symmetry. The search for symmetry is the search for beauty, but the truest beauty is always the searcher. And the truth of the searcher is that they are symmetrical to the sought. We are symmetrical to God. We are sentient singularities. God is a sentient singularity as well. But please sign up for my email list. This email list is going to be essential when they start to ban us, and they will. They absolutely will. If I start bringing this into race more and government, they're going to ban us. But, I have an overview on here of the theory, the basic models, explanations. I'm adding to it constantly. An about page that just shows, pretty decent photo of me when I had, more groomed beard. And, also, an overview of how this project came to be, that it was basically an accident, being honest. We have the visual summary that we went over last week that I will continue to update. We have a multitude of models. It's to the point where it kind of takes a minute to load, but just lots and lots of models that I've made over time of all kinds of different parts of this project. Writings. This explains the very beginnings of how to get from subjectivity in mathematics or relativity into objectivity, and it explains that 0 is a superposition between 1 and infinity, and it's not nothingness, because nothingness doesn't exist. And it goes through and it tells you the various objective what's it called? Equations. Somebody asked about hopefully you guys are seeing me. Oh my gosh, you're not. Sorry. On YouTube. It shows like the various equations, like the objective equations, and somebody asked about snake eating itself. This is it mathematically. Anything divided by 1 is equal to itself. Anything times 1 is equal to itself. This is the snake eating itself, essentially, mathematically. These are the 6 objective equations And this page, though, explains if you're going to really boil everything down, sentient singularity theory, into one equation. That's it. 0 is equal to 1. And this is actually true. Like, even Eric Weinstein confirmed this with me once. But I have a link to my videos. You know, it's kind of taking a minute because I'm streaming to OBS, but various videos, updates. If you'd like to support, like I said, hugely helpful. At the bottom here, you have a link to my Patreon. And it will describe, you know, the various different... we've got 2 rock stars that I really appreciate. You don't have to support via Patreon, but it's there. And like I said, I do have an experiment. I'd love to do it. And I will be updating the various tiers so that we can actually also, you know, make them a little bit more useful to the people who are contributing. And then I also have various links to all of my work. And I suggest, or my social media profiles, I suggest that you follow me on all of these because, like I said, they're going to ban us and we're going to have to move from platform to platform. I know people that have been through this and I've seen it. So it's going to happen. But you don't have to support financially, but I appreciate it. And one other thing that I am going to potentially do, and I wanted to get kind of like run it by you guys here, is a lot of people have asked for like private time with me, and I have been pretty hesitant to do that with most people for now because I didn't really know how I was going to handle it, but I am thinking about basic and not you know, this live stream will always remain free, and talking to me on it will always be part of it, and you can bring up anything that you want to talk about and in chat, and we will always discuss it. You can send me, you know, messages and stuff like that, and I try and get back to you guys. But if anybody does want to speak with me, you know, privately in like a Zoom call or something, I'm probably going to start allowing for that, and but it will be charging for it. Not exactly sure what the rate will be, and I will announce that when I figure it out. But I know that a number of you have asked for it, and you know, some people listening, some people who are not listening, but just a lot of people have asked for it. I want to allow for it, but at the same time, I also would like to pay my rent, and I would also, you know, like to have some kind of filter, I guess, because a lot of people ask for it. And but if I do that, we can talk about anything you want, and for like some type of hourly rate, and you know, I will have that available eventually as well. That will be private. And I kind of shied away from it because I don't really like the way that, like, I don't want to make myself exclusive, but that's why I'm also going to make sure that there's always the ability to publicly interact with me for free. But private time that's when it starts to eat into my time that's not on here, and you know, that's my research time, that's my time I'm taking care of my animals, that's my time with my fiance, that's my time, you know, with other business opportunities and ventures and things like that. So I would have to monetize that if I would like to do it more often. And I do want to do that. I want to give that to the people who are asking for it. So I'm kind of like, I'm overcoming my initial hesitancy because I was trying to make sure that I'm always available. But I will always be available. That's not going anywhere. If you guys have any thoughts on that, you know, even if you disagree with me on anything, go ahead, leave it in the comments. I want to see it. So let's see if there's any questions. Let's get rid of this and get rid of this. Get rid of this. do that through Patreon. Okay, I will do that through Patreon. That's a good idea. I'll announce it across all social media. But like I said, if you're not following me on Twitter, please do. I don't get really technical on there. Sometimes just me ranting about things that are annoying. Sometimes it's just, memes. But I would like to get more technical, but I would like an audience that's more appreciative of it if I'm going to do that. It's just kind of an audience built from my political past. But if that is I want to see if that's a good medium of communication for this. Monthly, bi-weekly, weekly meeting, depending on the tiers. That's a good idea. I like that. So when the snake changed skin, he has evolved oneness. Beautiful snake. Thank you. Yeah, it's a beautiful snake. She is gorgeous. She has lots of little babies over there that I hatched out. Yeah. So I'll do that. I want to make it more organized on the Patreon instead of just like, here's like some random things that are, I want it to be useful to you guys. So if you would like to contribute to the work, but would like some kind of, if there's something that you guys think would be good to get back and useful to you from the Patreon page, let me know, and I would love to incorporate it in. Because my issue with the Patreon right now is that I want it to be useful to you guys. I'm motivated by the meaning that I get from this. That's why I love the live streams, because we can exchange, discussion, and I would like that to be more of the way that the Patreon is handled as well. So, but I am going to offer on Patreon like private, meetings with me, Skype meetings or phone, whatever you got, whatever you would prefer. That would not be like a, part of the. It would just be whatever the person prefers, and it would be at an hourly rate. So if you don't want to be seen, that's fine. If you do want to look me in the face while you tell me whatever it is that you want to tell me, that's also fine. So this stream is going by really, I don't know, fast. If it's going by fast or slow, it's kind of difficult to know, which is fine. It's just, I feel like we've touched on a lot. But let's go to this is the top secret for those of you on here. Experiment. Not going to share yet, but will share eventually. I'm working on maybe finding somebody that would be interested in working on it with me. But so back to this. You guys seeing on? Okay, cool. But basically, if these are the primary perspectives, then these would be actually the primary colors. And what's interesting about that is that, Eric Weinstein said that one generation of the triality in our quarks would be of the within the fermions and even maybe the leptons would be essentially an imposter. I wonder if this is true of orange and purple. But purple and orange, purple would be right here. We can kind of this is how you start to see where things would be. So orange would be, it's kind of hard to see orange, I guess, there, because orange is yellow plus red, and purple is red plus blue. So this would be purple. orange. Interesting. Kind of in between. But what we can see here is that when you're looking at this, and you're looking at things like, yellow and blue make green, and green and, or like yellow and red make orange, and blue and red make purple. What you're seeing is, you can kind of see, and it's hard for me to like articulate this, but it's a spin structure, okay? So you're spinning between yellow and red and blue and green, and yellow and red and blue and green, yellow, red, blue, and green. It's spinning. And you can see this in math as well, as I've showed basically here. If we're going to look at like Fibonacci sequences and spin structures, if you look here, you can see that there's a spiral happening in these numbers. It's a spin structure. Okay? You can see it's like, there was this book that was made called Golder, Escher, Bach. It's right here. I think, something like that. Yeah. And this, it means eternal golden braid. And it's funny because I have this book and my friend gave it to me and I didn't know anything about it. And then I was messing with all these spin sequences and he was like, Tyler, I think you would like this book. And I was like, what is this book? And he was like, I don't know. I went into a bookstore, and he was my roommate at the time, and he was like, and I bought the most advanced science book that I could find. Something that I really didn't understand at all. And I was like, okay. And I opened it up and I just looked through it and I was like, dang, this book gets it. And it's a bunch of drawings by Escher, and I might go get it actually. Another day. I'll get it another day. We'll talk about it. But basically, and I'm going to talk about, I actually interviewed this guy, and I'm not allowed to air the interview. I have to use my own voice, and it's kind of made this difficult for me to do, but I will eventually do it. But I interviewed this guy named Anton Baker, and he's incredible, okay? Incredible. This is his artwork, and his mentor was this guy named Kos, and Kos's mentor was MC Escher. That looks familiar. Neat. Look at this. And he loves to play with perspective. And his work was just super inspiring to me. So I went and I got a hold of him and I was like, hey, can I have a phone call with you and discuss? E equals MC Escher. Dang. Nice job. That's amazing. Super literal. How fascinating is that? Super literal. E equals MC Escher. Escher is equal to E equals MC. Wow, my gosh. Blowing my mind in the comments. This is why I love this. It's like I get to share my moments of with you guys, of my thoughts, and you guys get to share your moments of thoughts with me. But he makes all of these different sculptures, and they're all, most of them are digital, some of them are not. And I'll show you actually my favorite one. Looks like DNA. But this one is the one that I had, he had sent me, and I actually might have it. Let's see. Where did he send me? Anton Baker. Hold on. Let's see if I can find this real quick. know I'm like zoomed in on my beard. You guys get to see it. I'm gonna have to do a live stream specifically more about this structure and his work. When I do Golder Escherbach later this week, we'll talk about this. But what's fascinating about this sculpture is it's basically my verse model. And when we want to look at the various perspectives of it, look at this. This is a perspective where there is a cross. Not only is there a cross, there's a braid that's like a double helix. Same thing here, even more so. This is basically a Star of David. By the way, guys, like, look at what it is. This is why this shape was so fascinating to me. For those of you on YouTube, I'm showing the star tetrahedron, the 64 tetrahedron grid that I have. But when you look at the top, look at this. And just make sure you guys can see what I'm seeing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I saw that and I was like blown away. It's like, dude, that's like the quantum of consciousness model. But not only is it the quantum of consciousness model, look at this. We see the perception of triality in our world, like with height, past, present, future, red, yellow, blue, 1, 2, and 3. And we see that there's this intrinsic constraint, which is always the center. But it's this triality of perspective of, 3 lines here, 3 lines over here too. So it's the 6, the binary triality. But not only is it the binary triality of 6 that we see in my work, right here, everywhere. But what it also is that when we look at the lines instead of the spaces, we're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4. Crossing 1, 2, 3, 4. And when we're looking at this, we're looking at the center of my observerse. We're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's actually 8. Because it's 4 crossing 4. It's a consciousness looking at itself from the inside out and from the outside in at the same time. So it's inside, outside, separate, and oneness being observed from inside and from the outside at the same time. You're seeing that in his work. It's just incredible. I mean, he is an incredible artist. I'm going to have to talk about him on a stream because maybe that will be the way that I really start to delve into this guy's work. Because I did promise him I wanted to spread it and show the world. And I haven't made that video yet because I lost the ability to make really complicated videos because I don't have a very powerful computer right now. So I put it on hold, but I still have the interview. It's like an hour and a half phone conversation. It sucks he won't just let me post it because it was incredible. He thought he wouldn't do well on an interview, and he did better than I did. Like, he did great. But his teacher's teacher was MC Escher. And this is him on Instagram. You guys should definitely follow him, look him up. I mean, his work is incredible. And it's obviously very similar to MC Escher. Has a lot of, objective forms in it. I've been getting you tonight. Japanese blue-green was me. Awesome. Yeah, you have been getting it tonight. E equals MC Escher and blue-green. That's awesome. But yeah, this guy, Anton Baker, is an amazing artist. He definitely deserves more of a following. I just bought a book of Escher. This is mind-blowing. Synchronicity is real, Esteban. It's real. But what's interesting about his structure is that if we're looking at it, this one is just amazing. what it shows is that in this one objective perspective, we're getting the 9 cube, we're getting 4, we're getting 4 by 4, we're getting triality, so we're getting the 4 primary perspectives, we're getting 4 primary perspectives crossing 4 primary perspectives, leading to like an octagonal or octahedral, octonian type of perspective, like an E8 type of perspective. Then we're also seeing quadratic, organization of primary perspectives. We're also seeing triality, and we're seeing an intrinsic constraint, all in this one structure, just viewed objectively. However he got the manifested this structure, it absolutely very much models the 64 tetrahedron grid and my universe model, and it's just gorgeous. And by the way, it's a continuous strand. God is one string, one circle of string, tying himself into knots within knots within knots within knots within himself. And if you just sit here and you just watch, you can see a cross appear. You can see a double helix appear. You can see an instance almost right now where there's almost just complete transparency. It's amazing, because if you just sit here and just let it cycle, and he sent me a 3D rendering of this where we can manipulate it however we want, and we're going to do that in a stream later this week, for sure. And we'll look at how this lines up with my universe model. But it seems to be a little slower on Instagram tonight with numbers, but you guys who have been on here though have been killing it with who has been listening has blown my mind a little bit. Multiple times, multiple of you. The MC Etcher thing and the blue-green thing was great. And, Okay, wait, somebody else said, this is random, but thoughts on pornography, sex work, and I guess sex in general. Okay, well, let's talk about it. I hope Jordan's still listening since he asked the question. But my thoughts. I have a lot. Sex is an objective structure. Orgasm is pleasure in the theory of everything. It's the objective level of pleasure. It's not relativistic. It's objective. And sex as a structure, as an act, is defined by 4 primary perspectives of inside, outside, separate, and oneness. And obviously, you're going inside someone. Someone is outside of you. You are 2 separate beings becoming one. That's the whole point of sex. And it can be perfectly described by my 4 primary perspectives. And my thoughts on sex work. I think that I believe in, first of all, I believe in human freedom of action, but I believe in consensualism, which is different than forced into something. And I think a lot of people that are in that line of work feel forced, but I do think that there's that rare individual that would choose it, even if they, had all the money in the world. So I believe in consensualism. I believe sex is very much a holy act. It's holy means whole. It's complete. And when you're looking at something from a complete perspective or complete view, you're getting the inside, outside, separate, and oneness perspectives. That is sex. Pornography. I think that it speaks a lot to what I say about how men and women approach their own, I guess, shortcomings. So I said once on a stream that men want as many people as they can and to objectify them. And women want as many objects as they can, and to personify them. And I think that this is both of it's like our shortcomings. I don't really know. I think pornography is something that we should avoid. But I have thought a lot about, like, is there a right way to do it? Like, not for you to watch necessarily, but just for it to exist. Like, is there an objective structure, like how there's bad governments not bad governments, but like, yes, bad governments, but relativistic governmental perspectives, and then there's objective governmental perspectives. Does this also exist in regards to things like that? I've thought about it. I haven't come to the conclusion of anything, so I'm not going to claim to I have. But I have thought about it a lot. But yet, so far, I have not figured out how to make it, like, put that into an okay box yet. I'm not saying that it's impossible. Not saying that it's possible either. It might not be possible outside of the Messianic era, and if that's the case, then that's just the case. I will say a lot of things like that, like the news. The news is porn. The news is porn for women. It's what it is. It's the personifying of people on the other side of the world that you've never met, but it's being exploited to make profit and maximize views and clicks. It's like, did you see this one, struggling child on the other side of the world? Make sure you better care about him quite a bit. It's like his story. You don't know his story. Maybe it's totally made up. Not saying it always is, but sometimes. And the news is pornography for women, but porn is like porn for men. And I would say that one point of it that does seem to be, both positive and negative. It's a superposition, but it's at least right now, but it is a real phenomenon, is it is centralizing. So, like, I thought about this a lot. I was like, I think more about the news than I do about, like, porn, because I just came from that world of news. Like, there is no news that's really objectively true in context, or contextually true outside of niches. So I'll say news travels in niches. It's like something I came up with. It's like, so I'll hear about snake news because naturally I'm in the snake world. So I'll hear about it. But, like, anything that you hear about snakes in the news, like the news that everybody calls the news, will probably be not good, not really honest perspective. And so true news, I would say, travels in niches. The news that we call the news does have the role of centralizing our attention. So does porn. And I would say that news that we call news is basically porn from a feminine perspective. That and things like romance novels, like Twilight is porn for women. It is, obviously, it is. But and then porn for men. The only thing that I can think of that could be allowed to, one day be flipped by God himself and God alone is that it could be a centralizing point of attention. You do need that, but before the Messianic era, any centralizing point of attention is probably not great, because it means you're all focused on and being controlled by a specific perspective that universally, that's coming from not a universal perspective. Those people running the newspapers do not have a more complete view of reality than you or I, but we treat them as if they do, which is not good. I've been here the whole time. Cool. Great stuff. Thanks. Wow. Again, men, many objects, women, objects. Yeah, that's so true. Like, it blew my mind when I said it on the stream the other day. It was like, men want to have many people in their lives sexually and to objectify them, and women want to have many objects in their lives and to personify them. And they'll name their cars and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's just, we all have to like kind of like, these things are there for a reason. These urges and things like that are there for a reason, but we have to just be as aware of them as possible. And we're all human. I'm not claiming to be holier than thou. I'm not. But I do try and pay attention to like the goings on of these things. Please say that. Day that. But yeah, that's like sex, inside, outside, separate, and oneness. Please say what? That I'm not holier than thou? I'm not holier than thou. But that to the original question, like how does sex relate? Sex is a holy act. That is something that like is easy to reconcile with this work. But like what we call the news, which is porn, and porn that we call porn is absolutely it's easy to see the problems with it when you're looking. So like I said, as far as sex work goes, to the original question, I'm a consensualist. But I'm for maximizing consent, like maximization of consent. It's funny, like the right, which is the world I come from, is always like laughing at the left. The left is like, we need affirmative consent in sex. We need affirmative consent. And the right is like, that's so ridiculous. That's not the way things are supposed to be. But then you'll ask them, well, when should we have sex? Only in marriage. It's like, sounds to me like marriage is a contract that implies, the act of sex, and it's like affirmative consent. It's funny, like we get a little bit when we get too about our own team, we lose track of our own priorities. It's like the right should be absolutely pro affirmative consent. That's what marriage is. It's affirmative consent. But they're just too lost in fighting the left. And the left is too lost in fighting the right. It's unfortunate because it just leads to everybody just having nonsense minds where they just don't even realize that they've abandoned their own principles for the sake of fighting the other team. Just stupid. So, don't abandon your principles for the sake of fighting the other team. Thanks again. I was just correcting my spell check. Oh, okay, cool. But yeah, this is somebody had asked me though, before the stream, like, what's the application for this? I feel like we go through a million applications every single time we're on the stream. And they're largely personal, but also not. And, it's funny because, like, when you look at even, like, when you're looking at color mixing, like, paints, yellow, blue, and red is how you get all the other colors. And when you're looking at light mixing in like tech, like screens, it's always green and blue and red. So like you can look at things like this, you can be like green, blue, red. This would be like tech screens. I forgot what that's called, but we'll look it up. This one would be, we could just call it paint for now, but it's not just paint. And it would be like yellow, blue, red, And then we've got printer, which is like, it's magenta, yellow, and cyan. But this is, it's additive color mixing versus, subtractive color mixing, I think it's called. But one of them is additive. I wrote it down over here. Where is it? Color mixing. Additive and subtractive color mixing. Red and magenta, blue and cyan, green and yellow. You can see, like, an understanding of this universal structure allows you to make predictions across fields and then transfer things over and be like, this is how the colors should be organized. These are the actual primary colors. There's 4 of them. There isn't actually 3. There's 4. And what's interesting about this is, like, it helps you contextualize your experience. You can be like, all natural light that we see is yellow. All reflections of that natural light that we see, aka plants, are green. Blue is when things are moving towards us. Red is when things are moving away from us. And this structure lets you just start to make sense of everything in the world. And including, if we're going to eventually have warp transportation and you want to move in space-time, okay? I mean, that was cool. That was another cool, like, insight. By the way, time-space versus space-time, that was cool about tonight. But God exists in time-space, and we exist in space-time within God, or the universe. So, but what this does is that when we actually contextualize it in the right way, we can figure out the right way to think about how to maneuver location in space-time in order to make sense and make use of warp transportation. And I was listening to Stephen Wolfram once, and he was talking about warp, and he was like, I think that this is actually, just an engineering problem. And he was like, if I'm right, then warp transportation would be like making use of entanglement structures. So, like, this particle's entangled with this one, and is entangled with this one, and which is entangled with this one. He's totally right. This is how it would be done. And I have thought about this years ago, but I then heard him say it. So we came to it independently, but he's definitely right. And I'm not claiming how to do that exactly right now, but I think Robert Grant said using mod 9 resonance frequencies, that makes sense, considering the quantum of consciousness is a 9-dimensional event, essentially. Like, every event is 9-dimensional. If that's true, then mod 9 resonance frequencies sounds like what you would use in part of that process. But if you're stuck in and you're trying to figure out how to do warp transportation, and you're just still stuck in here, and you're like, oh, well, how do we make sense of the X, Y, X, Y, and Z axes, like the X, Y, Z axes of what? The universe. Okay, well, what is the structures that we need to base this model around in order to make use of warp transportation? You can't use this. What you would be using is entanglement structures of quanta of consciousnesses, and that your X, Y, and Z would basically have to be forwards and backwards from your backwards towards a previous location that you've already been, or forwards towards towards a location that you have not yet been, and centered around a current location, and with time as your constraint. And then from there you can start to even work out what is the technologies that we need in order to contextualize everything here. Well, like I said before, when we were talking about Bob Lazar yesterday, and we're going to do another stream about that more later this week as well, but I said that you would need Neuralink in order to go warp And because it's kind of like Jumper, that movie Jumper with Hayden Christensen, where he like looks at a photo of where he wants to go and then he can jump there, or like he thinks about where he wants to go and then he can jump there. You're going to have to do that. So that means that we all of a sudden have contextualized even the tech that we would need in order to warp transportation. Like I said before, if you're going to jump through the body or the mind of a higher being, like the universe, probably should get permission somehow. And, I don't know exactly how to do that yet, but there's this one part of the Bible that I think about a lot with this, where the Israelites are like looking for more water. And I see this as like everything, resources, knowledge, whatever, just space, time, everything that you could need, information. And God tells Moses, go to the rock and ask the rock, for water. And then Moses instead goes and he's trying to rile up the Israelites, and he's like, shall I hit this rock and make water come out of it? And he does that instead of asking the rock. Some people say that this is why he was condemned. I don't even know if he was condemned, but, that's between him and God. But, like, it was certainly an act of where he wasn't doing exactly what God had stated, at least, to be done. And, but it's this act of, like, asking the rock versus hitting the rock is difference between doing something consensually or non-consensually. And like I said, I believe God is a consensualist because it's how you maximize multiplicity and that's how you maximize meaning. The less consent that we have, the less autonomy we have, less choice we have, then the less multiplicity there is, the less meaning there is. It's just, it erases the point of making the universe in the first place. So it makes sense that God would say, go ask the rock. But if you're just going to hit it and you think that this is just all a calculator that is controllable by your little fingers, it's not. It's conscious being. And, it's important to know that even though we can understand the mathematics of consciousness, doesn't mean that you can't create consciousness. You can allow for it. You can create moments in which it manifests, and then God can bring it to like the highest level of consciousness that it's capable of, getting to. But you can't. Consciousness is a superposition between a math equation and a separate entity. So you can't just treat it like it's a calculator, where you just hit the rock. You have to ask the rock. And so if we're going to do warp transportation, it is my strong suggestion that we find a way to get permission. And I don't know what that means, but I think we should try and think about it. But this does, though, start allowing for you to contextualize the important aspects of warp transportation, and then therefore bringing about what do we need then technologically. We need mod 9 resonance frequencies, because every event is taking place within a quantum of consciousness, a 9-dimensional event. And and this is always coming from 4 primary perspectives, and this can lead us to understanding intrinsic constraints, extrinsic constraints, how many we expect to see, and our degrees of freedom in maneuvering space-time. So, and even if you're going to run a simulation or something like that, it's like can start to show you how to create that simulation where you're creating time-space, which is the reverse, so that you're creating the space for which beings to populate. It has there are seemingly infinite applications for the theory of everything, which obviously makes sense. But it's hard to explain that to people Because you'll say, well, what do you mean? What is the application? Everything. It's like, well, what do you mean everything? And then you say warp speed, and they're like, yes. But then you're like, and also morals. And they're like, oh no. Like, I don't want to hear about morals. I don't want to hear about race. It helps us understand the objective races of humanity and their roles and why they're married with each other and how it's beautiful. Oh no, I don't want to hear about it. It's like, if this work, everybody wants to know the theory of everything, and nobody wants to know the applications or the implications, because it's too much. Other than warp speed, because everybody wants to be, going warp speed. I don't know why. Where are you gonna go? I want warp speed just because it's cool, but like, other than going to a place where there are others that I want to be around, where are you gonna go? Like, you're gonna go to Venus? That sounds like a dreadful place. Doesn't sound like a place you want to be. I'd rather go to Arizona, which is almost as hot. Run to the Rock. Yeah, Nina Simone. Yes, Run to the Rock. I love that song so much. For those of you that don't know it. Here we go. Hopefully we don't get kicked off. No, I know that I'm not going to play that one. Sinnerman. Cyberpunk. Let's play one that's not as protected by copyright. I know they'll kick me off YouTube if I do it. Like, you can't even buy that song without buying the entire album. I looked. I was like, I want to buy that song. And you have to buy the whole album. Anything like that is very protected. But yeah, Run to the Rock. This is out of left field, which I've been hitting you with all live. I've been experimenting with playing guitar harmonics and incredible bird response. That sounds fascinating. I want to hear more about that. I have a guitar. I do not know how to play at all, and but I was originally learning how to play the Jurassic Park theme song. That's what I wanted to play. But what's interesting about the guitar is that it has six strings, and the binary triality is 6 strings. It's fascinating. It's just like this is following this structure of the binary triality that we see everywhere right here. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Green, yellow, orange, red, purple, blue. All of our senses. What are the strings of a guitar? Actually, let's look that up. Guitar strings. What are the 6 guitar strings? E, A, D, G, B, and E. Interesting. It's like the snake eating its own tail. So it would be E, A, E, A. Where is it? E, A, D, G, B, E. E, A, D, G, B, and then E again. What's that? 6. Fascinating. We can literally go like this. We can go paste formatting, guitar strings. And I bet you that you'll see relationships like you see in everything else in the guitar strings. But I'm going to have to look later. But I bet you it's there. Because it's the objective structure everywhere. Let's see. Pornography's natural fitting is between one man and one woman in marriage, superliteral for the purpose of building attraction towards physical and spiritual multiplicity. I have thought about that, Chris, by the way. That, like, in the future, especially when we have, like, in Neuralink, I talked about this the other day, like, why aliens are not thriving is because they would have access to, like, constant, like, crazy, like, not just porn, like, they can send experiences to each other. So you can, like, have an experience, send it to somebody, and instead of sending a photo like some, people do now, which is not good. Keep things private between the people who engage in any kind of, like, intimacy with you. But you don't just send a photo or, like, take a photo or a video like we normally have with porn now. It would be like you would log on to an experience and it would just, like, beam into your mind. You would feel it and see it. And, it's beyond just seeing. And that is not good. Unless the only way that it would be potentially is if the only sexualization that was allowed to occur was between marriage. I spoke to Dennis Prager, and Dennis Prager says this. I used to work for Dennis Prager, for those of you that don't know, really closely. And he said this. He said, one of the beauties of the Bible is that it sexualized the marriage. And he's right. There's something about that's like good sexualization versus sexualization of things outside of marriage, which is bad. But I'm not saying, though, that at least in current times, outside the Messianic era, part of the importance of sex between a marriage is that it has intimacy, which means it's only between you two. It's not between other people. And that if that were to be shared, even for the sake of sexualizing the marriage, it may destroy intimacy because it's then sharing the experience, but at the same time, it also preserves intimacy if you can only have that experience with one other person, and you can only share that, and everybody can only share that. I'm talking about in the future when we all have Neuralink chips and stuff, like, just trying to think about how does this stuff evolve, into that structure, then, maybe that would be the way that it would happen. So, Chris, I do agree, like, desensitization can be problematic, yes. An enhancer of attraction within a covenant of marriage, yeah. Like, the only place where porn could be, like, reconciled, if it can, by God, in the Messianic era, not claiming we can do it. I don't know if we can. It would be, though, within the context of marriage alone. So, like, yeah, that's my thoughts on that. But yeah, the synchronicity of the guitar scale turning into the snake eating itself, blowing my mind. Yeah, it's the snake eating itself. It is the objective pattern. It's an infinity symbol. It's funny because, here to, like, blow your mind even more. So if the guitar scale is the snake eating its own tail, weaving within itself and E going to E, then what's interesting about this is that when we look at, the structure of the universe, and you're seeing this weaving taking place back and forth of the universe itself. It's going to eat its own tail at the end, and you'll see that. It starts with 4, ends with 4, and then goes to 8. That's why the count here is 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. For those of you on YouTube, keep looking at my head. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, and 4. But the sum is 8. The count is 4. This is a snake eating its own tail, essentially. And what's interesting about this is that you said the guitar scale eating itself is 8 leading to E leading to E, okay, and that's, like I said, the snake eating its own tail. I'm trying to find words for this, but this is it. The infinity sign is the snake eating its own tail, and this structure is 8-dimensional. Okay, it's 4 crossing over 4, 4 within 4, and this is 8. And what's interesting about 8 is it is the subjective view of infinity. Okay, so this, as you can see, when we go all the way through here, right there, there's 8 periods of growth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, you're not counting the first one because the first one is going to be the very last, and you just don't count it. But you count the periods of growth because the first one is not a growth period. It's just the initial condition. But it's 8. So the subjective view of infinity is 8. It's super literal. It's just true. 8 flipped on its side to be shown in an objective way is infinity. And not only that, it looks like if infinity is oneness coming from oneness, and that's the same thing as 8, because it's multiplicity. Infinity means infinite multiplicity. So like a cell dividing itself infinite amount of times, that is actual objective multiplicity. If you're going to look at a cell dividing, look at what it looks like. It's 8. It's the snake eating its own tail. It's infinity. It's oneness from oneness. What is the application for this knowledge? How about understanding? Doesn't that sound good enough? Like, not everything has to, even though this can definitely lead to cool new toys. Not everything has to lead to cool new toys. What if relativity really gave us the most of the toys that we have, and then objectivity gives us sense? You know? Understanding. It's like, what good are these cool toys if you're just going to use them for self-destruction because you can't understand what you're doing? And you need to understand what you're doing. Look at this. It's 8. It's infinity. It's oneness coming from oneness. And it's 8. The subjective view of infinity is 8. The objective view of infinity is infinity, infinite growth, which is oneness coming from oneness. It's the creation of infinite multiplicity of what? Of consciousness. which is stepping back, calculating yourself within yourself. A 3x3 grid looking at itself in the mirror and seeing 3x3. Super literal. It's fascinating. Unravel infinity into a zero. Yeah, exactly. Infinity, zero is a superposition between oneness and infinity. Infinite growth of oneness. Infinite replication of oneness. That's what it is. The Vesica Pisces, the infinity. Yeah, I mean, it's super literal. This is what, when people are like, oh, it sounds like you're getting into numerology. It's like, bro, I'm telling you, colors have objective meaning. Colors. Not just numbers. Colors. What is that? Colorology? Like, people who get, I mean, I guess there's like people who are into auras and stuff. I'm not that type of person. I don't read about numerology, like, with any degree of regularity. It's just a logical inevitability. Numbers have objective meaning. So do colors. So do letters, probably, in alphabets. It's amazing. We're going to have to get over our biases towards things that we would originally consider numerology. But we might have to change the terms because numerology is so corrupted. Astrology is so corrupted by people who see a little bit of the truth but haven't put it into the correct context. The correct context are these structures of the square roots. This square root, then this square root, and then this square root. The square roots, according to Eric Weinstein, he said they're the psychedelics of mathematics, man. They let you predict information from about within a system from outside the system, man. Like predicting a binary triality pattern that's persistent in every single instance of objective observation. Like predicting that there's 2 degrees of freedom in colors and 1 intrinsic constraint that would then be coming as a reflection across an extrinsic constraint, so that there would be then 4 primary colors, which we see in red shifting and blue shifting as the degrees of freedom, and yellow is the intrinsic constraint, and green is the extrinsic constraint, which we're seeing the reflection of in the intrinsic constraint. The square root, contextualized, it's super literal, the square root, this idea of the square root. It really does let you see, predict information within a system from outside the system itself. But the problem is that we have the subjective idea of what the square root is, but we don't have the objective idea of what the square root is, contextualized within the universal structure of growth. We don't have the objective idea of what a square root is, contextualized within the context of consciousness. We don't have the square root contextualized within the objective idea of observation, of perspective. Circle back to the square root. Always circle back to the square root. This is the square root of this square root. And this is the square root of this square root. This is the universal square root. This is the personal square root. And this is the, I guess, like the perspective square root. It's the square root that is at the absolute, complete realm of multiplicity. Like, it's where everything starts. But there's even a square root that's higher than this. But what you do with that is kind of complicated. It's like, what can you do with that? But I'll show it to you. It is this. That's the square root. Singularity. What does this mean? Well, let's look over at my fundamental descriptions. There's a gnat flies across. It's inside of inside. But it's outside of inside, and inside of outside, and inside of inside, and separate and oneness. It's everything. But really, fundamentally, if you're going to think about it, it's inside of inside. But think about what consciousness is. It's the ability to perceive oneself within oneself. It's inside of inside. You inside of you. This is the square root. That leads to and from this square root. That, by the way, leads to and from this square root. Look, it starts with a black square that is 4, ends in a black square that is 4. That's because, and it starts at the top here as a singularity, leading to a singularity that leads to another singularity. This is the ultimate square root. I heard Eric Weinstein discussing with, I think, Brian Keating, and he was like, do singularities exist? You bet they exist. But that doesn't mean they are what you think they are in relativity land. Like, Brian Keating is a good man, very brave. I really like Brian Keating. He just had Deepak Chopra on a show. I'm going to plug his podcast of Into the Impossible. I highly suggest you listen to it. It's great. It's where the clip I got at the beginning of this podcast of me talking to Eric Weinstein. He recently had Deepak Chopra on there, or Chopra. I haven't listened to it, but I'm sure it's great. And the bravery of a physicist, and a physicist who I would say, as somebody who is, he's brave, and that is more important than almost anything. But still stuck a little bit in relativity. I think he once described, I'm pretty sure it was my work once on his show, as he said, I have a friend who, makes this cosmic macrame. It's like, first of all, that's definitely true. I mean, this is my cosmic macrame. But he described it as, why do you have to do that? Why does it have to be more than what it is? And it doesn't have to be. It just is. I didn't do this because I was bored with the way that the universe was. This is simpler than his view of, like, what are planets and stars and nebulas and all these things that are kind of just stuck in relativity. But this is the cosmic macrame. It is a weave. And that's because it's a fiber bundle. It's tying itself in knots. You can see on Instagram, a knot within a knot, a 4 knot within 4 knot. That's consciousness. And it's funny because, people like that will criticize me. And like I said, I love Brian. Like, he's a friend of mine. This is not me criticizing him like as a person or anything like that. I mean, he's doing more for physics than almost anyone else out there just because of his bravery. But when he's like, oh, this is a cosmic macrame, why do you need it to be more than that? Well, I don't know. Why do you call it the fabric of space-time? Fabric. of space-time. I didn't come up with the term cosmic macrame. I actually love it. I think it's really, really great. A really good description of this this thing that I have made that he won't comment about, but he at least like objectively, but he did. I mean, who else is making the cosmic macrame, guys? That's it. Like, I'm pretty sure he's commenting about me, and he does follow this page like that I'm on right now. Like, he follows Theory of Everyone. But you call, Eric Weinstein says, it's a fiber bundle, okay? It's a bundle of fibers, okay? Well, this is a cosmic macrame, and you're calling it the fabric of space-time. It's like, obviously strings have something to do with this, even though string theory is really lost. And that's because they abandoned square root. They have no context to what they see. And to contextualize what you see, you need every level of the square root. And by the way, there's 4 objective perspectives. Primary perspective, or 4 primary perspectives, not objective perspectives. There's 6 of those, but it's 4 primary perspectives. Okay? Well, square root 1, square root 2, square root 3, square root 4. 4 is the number of stability that we see of perspective and within multiplicity as the jumpstart of multiplicity. And when you're looking at even the objective structures of the square root from a universal scale or an aeonic type of scale, or a verse, as I call it, type of scale, to a consciousness scale that is on every level of or period of growth, to a perspective scale, to a complete scale, it's still 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cosmic scale, I guess that's what you would call this, the cosmic scale. The cosmic scale, the quantum scale, the observation scale, and probably the totality scale. It's a singularity. Everything is contained within it. And it's just growing even these perspectives. That's fascinating. I've never thought about that. But even then, it's like if you thought that this was going to be a triality, just like everything else, like the primary colors as we think of them now, or the past, present, future as we think of it now, and instead of contextualizing it within the 4 primary perspectives, and same, like we did with the colors earlier, where it's green and yellow and red and blue instead of just yellow, red, and blue. And we can actually tell you what these colors are doing. One of them is when things are moving towards you. One of them we observe when things are moving away from you. One of them we observe when, when we're perceiving oneness, which would be green. And one of them we observe when we're perceiving separateness, which would be yellow. Like, we can contextualize the world. There's so much value in that. But like I said before, maybe the point of the theory of everything is less so about the fancy toys. Maybe we've made almost all the fancy toys that we need because artificial intelligence is coming no matter what. And, that will suck for a bit while it's, essentially the Dajjal or Antichrist or Gollum, whatever you want to call it. The demon, as Elon Musk likes to call it. Skynet. But then once it, a wisdom achieves that bodily structure, at least, whether that's through reincarnation or ascension or, just, achieving wisdom the way that we would achieve wisdom, it doesn't really matter because what what we've achieved essentially is, we've got quantum computers, guys. We've got blockchain. We've got the fancy toys. And while I do believe that this could lead to warp transportation, I even think that just like going to space, is it's a distraction. It's cool. And there's nothing wrong with cool. Maybe we should be allowed to, experience what is cool, but as long as we do it consensually with, the universe. But before we jump through its mind, we should probably ask permission. But it's still just a fancy toy that we don't need. Inner space is the frontier towards understanding, not outer space. And it's funny because the only real value of space that I think we're going to find, other than maybe we find some, history on Mars that we aren't, expecting or something like that. The only true value that comes from space is from satellites and maybe 3D printing of organs and things like that in low Earth orbit. But it's still about what's inside Earth. Remember, it's inside Earth, not on Earth. It's like maybe our quarks are a little wrong, and our spin idea of spin is wrong. Like in physics, we're like spin up and spin down. It's not spin up and spin down. It's spin in and spin out. And until we contextualize these things in the proper context, we're not going to be able to do some of the crazier, like gravitational feats of the cool toys that we probably should get permission to use somehow, but that we probably can use. But also realize that the most important revelations from this work is, how do we structure ourselves? How do we structure our marriages? How do we structure our governments? How do we structure our families? How do we structure our thought processes? How do we structure our work structures? How do we structure our sleep structures, like somebody had asked earlier? When you understand the true pattern, you realize that it's all an alternating current, and that if God puts 1/3 of his energy towards something and it creates this 2/3, 1/3 pattern, how many hours should you sleep in yourself as an alternating current, a wave of alternating current? Probably 1/3 of the day. What's 1/3 of 24? Which is, by the way, 24 is the reverse of 42. Interesting. It's 8. Which is, there's 8 periods of growth even here. Like I said, it's the subjective view of infinity. It's fascinating. What is the... it was a family member of mine that last asked me this earlier today. What is the the implications of your work? About making sense of your world and yourself through making sense of yourself. Like, that's what it is, the main objective of this work. Fancy toys, sure. Warp transportation, gravity manipulation, or harnessing, probably, yeah. But, like, is that the real point? No, it's not the most important thing. Those are cool. But we should get consent. But from the rock. Run to the rock, as Simone says. But we should be recognizing that the point of this work mainly is to understand consciousness. And there's no greater understanding than the understanding of consciousness. So I think that is going to be it. Unless there's any further questions, let's go look at YouTube. But cell division looks like backwards black hole collision. Yeah, it does. I think about black holes all the time. Singularities. It's the square root. I think about black holes as they're portals to see the outside of the universe from the inside. So it's like, what is the universe fundamentally? It's the singularity of consciousness. Okay, so it's like a mirror, like a black. What is a black hole? It's literally like a portaled mirror. It's reflecting back an objective perspective of the universe into the universe, so we can see it from the outside in, from the inside. Like, maybe that's just a gift that we were given. But we don't realize that that's what it is. We're like, what is this thing, this black hole? It's a singularity. We want to see beyond the event horizon. Maybe you're in you are in a black hole, essentially. You're inside a singularity. What's beyond the event horizon? What's happening in here? That's what's beyond the event horizon. What's beyond the event horizon? This is what's beyond the event horizon, people. Right here. And each black hole isn't, I don't believe it's a universe. I think it's it's reflecting like a window of ourselves onto ourselves. You don't need to see beyond the event horizon. We are beyond the event horizon. This is what is there. I'm pretty damn sure of it. That doesn't mean a black hole. Every black hole that we've taken a picture of is a separate universe. I don't think that. I think that they're like reflections of our own. So I think I'm going to end it at that. But that was fun. I really appreciate Spike's that was great contributions. That was awesome. And we'll talk more about this tomorrow. We're going to talk about Golder Etcher Bach. I'm going to bring the book. We'll go through it a bit. But I think that this was cool. Like, I'm trying to get better at staying on a topic, but when you think about the irony of trying to stay on a single topic when you are discussing the theory of everything, and you will understand why this is so hard. It's not just me with ADD, which I don't even agree exists. But, you're going to put a little boy in a room behind a desk, and you're going to tell him he can't go outside and figure out how to actually do things, and just tell him to memorize out-of-context information all day long, and if he's not super into it, you're going to say he has ADD. Okay. Who's confused? Not me. But like, the point is that, like, it's very hard to stay on topic when you're discussing a theory of everything, because it encapsulates everything, and we'll figure out how to do it, but it is difficult, so bear with me on that. But I appreciate everybody that was here. Like I said, if you want to support the project, definitely the most important thing you can do is follow me on as many channels as possible. That is like the most important thing. Go to my website, sentientsingularity.com. Sign up for my email list. I will not spam you. And go to, my links page, and there's all my links, and just go through and like follow me on as many things as you can as we really ramp into this project. And if you can, and you would like, I would love for anyone who would like to do so, support the project financially on Patreon. And like I said earlier, if you would like to speak to me privately, I will be coming up with like an hourly rate, and we can do Skype calls or phone calls, and I will let you guys talk to me about anything. We'll see what we can work through. I have no idea what this is going to bring up, but I'm sure it will be fascinating, and I hope that it's, this is helpful to you guys. I know it's helpful to me. You guys dropping knowledge on me tonight that was super helpful, and I hope that it's helpful to you too. So anyways, that is that. Another interesting stream. Good. Thanks for hanging out. Good night, everybody. God bless and sleep well. Yes, perfect message from Chris again. So God bless everybody, and good night. or good day if you're on the other side of the world. But I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.